Chapter 11. Quidditch. As they entered November, the weather turned very cold. The mountains around the school became icy gray and the lake like chilled steel. Every morning the ground was covered in frost. Hagrid could be seen from the upstairs window defrosting broomsticks on the Quidditch field, bundled up in a long moleskin overcoat, rabbit fur gloves, and enormous beaver skin boots. The Quidditch season had begun. On Saturday, Harry would be playing his first match after weeks of training. Gryffindor versus Slytherin. If Gryffindor won, they would move up into second place in the house championship. Hardly anyone had seen Harry play because Wood had decided that, as their secret weapon, Harry should be kept, well, secret. But the news that he was playing Seeker had leaked out somewhere, and Harry didn't know which was worse, people telling him he'd be brilliant or people telling him that they'd be running around underneath him holding a mattress. It was really lucky now that Harry now had Hermione as a friend. He didn't know how he'd gotten through all his homework without her, with all the last-minute Quidditch practice Wood was making them do. She also let him Quidditch Through the Ages, which turned out to be a very interesting read. Harry learned that there were 700 ways of committing a Quidditch foul, and all of them had happened during a World Cup match in 1473. That Seekers were usually the smallest and fastest players. The most serious Quidditch accidents seemed to happen to them, and that although people rarely died in playing Quidditch, referees had been known to vanish and turn up months later in the Sahara Desert. Hermione had become a bit more relaxed about breaking rules since Ron and Harry had saved her from the mountain troll, and she was much nicer for it. The day before Harry's first Quidditch match, the three of them were out in the freezing courtyard during break, and she conjured them up a bright blue fire that could be carried around in a jam jar. They were standing with their backs to it, getting warm, when Snape crossed the yard. Harry noticed at once that Snape was limping. Harry, Ron, and Hermione moved closer together to block the fire from view. They were sure it wouldn't be allowed. Unfortunately, something about their guilty faces caught Snape's eye. He limped over. He hadn't seen the fire, but he seemed to be looking for a reason to tell them off anyway. "What's that you've got there, Potter?" It was Quidditch Through the Ages. Harry showed him. "Library books are not to be taken outside the school," said Snape. "Give it to me. 5 points from Gryffindor." "He just made that rule up," Harry muttered angrily. Snape limped away. "Wonder what's wrong with his leg." "To know, but I hope it's really hurting him," said Ron bitterly. The Gryffindor common room was very noisy that evening. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat together next to a window. Hermione was checking Harry and Ron's charms homework for them. She would never let them copy. How will you learn? But by asking her to read it through, they got the right answers anyway. Harry felt restless. He wanted Quidditch Through the Ages back, and to take his mind off his nerves about tomorrow. Why should he be afraid of Snape? Getting up, he told Ron and Hermione he was going to ask Snape if he can have it. "Better you than me," they said together. But Harry had an idea that Snape wouldn't refuse if there were other teachers listening. He made his way down to the staff room and knocked. There was no answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Perhaps Snape had left the book in there. It was worth a try. He pushed the door ajar and peered inside, and a horrible scene met his eyes. Snape and Filch were inside alone. Snape was holding his robes above his knees. One of his legs was bloody and mangled. Filch was handing Snape bandages. "Blasted thing," Snape was saying. "How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all 3 heads at once?" Harry tried to shut the door quietly, but "Potter!" Snape's face was twisted with fury as he dropped his robes quickly to hide his leg. Harry gulped. "I wondered if I could have my book back." "Get out! Out!" Harry left before Snape could take any more points from Gryffindor. He sprinted back upstairs. "Did you get it?" Ron asked Harry when he joined them. "What's the matter?" In a low whisper, Harry told them what he'd seen. "You know what this means?" He finished presently. "He tried to get past that 3-headed dog on Halloween. That's where he was going when we saw him. He's after what it's guarding, and I bet my broomstick he let that troll in to make a diversion." Hermione's eyes were wide. "No, he wouldn't. I know he's not very nice, but he wouldn't try and steal something Dumbledore was keeping safe. Honestly, Hermione, you think all teachers are saints or something?" snapped Ron. "I'm with Harry. I wouldn't put anything past Snape. What's he after? What's that dog guarding?" Harry went to bend his head, buzzing with the same question. Neville was snoring loudly, but Harry couldn't sleep. He tried to empty his mind. He needed to sleep. He had to. He had the first Quidditch match in a few hours, but the expression on Snape's face when Harry had seen his leg wasn't easy to forget. The next morning dawned, very bright and cold. The great hall was full of delicious smell of fried sausages and the cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to a good Quidditch match. "I've got to eat some breakfast." "I don't want anything. Just a bit of toast," wailed Hermione. "I'm not hungry." Harry felt terrible. In an hour's time, he'd be walking into the field. "You need your strength," said Seamus Finnegan. "Seekers are always the ones who get clobbered by the other team." "Thanks, Seamus," said Harry, watching Seamus pile ketchup on his sausages. By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be out in the stands around the Quidditch pitch. Many students had binoculars. The seats might be raised high in the air, but it was still difficult to see what was going on sometimes. Ron and Hermione joined Neville, Seamus, and Dean in the West Ham fan up in the top room. As a surprise for Harry, they had painted a large banner, and then on one of the sheets Scabbers had ruined. It said Potter for President, and Dean, who was good at drawing, had done a large Gryffindor lion underneath. Then Hermione had performed a tricky little charm so that the paint flashed different colors. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Harry and the rest of the team were changing into their scarlet Quidditch robes. Slytherin would be playing in green. Wood cleared his throat for silence. "Okay, men," he said. "And women," said Chaser Angela Johnson. "And women," Wood agreed. "This is it. The big one," said Fred. "The one we've all been waiting for," said George. "We know Oliver's speech by heart," Fred told Harry. "We were on the team last year." "Shut up, you two," said Wood. "This is the best team Gryffindor's had in years. We're going to win. I know it." He glared at them all, as if to say, "Or else." "Right, it's time. Good luck, all of you." Harry followed Fred and George out of the locker room, and hoping his knees weren't going to give way, walked onto the field to loud cheers. Madame Hooch was refereeing. She stood in the middle of the field waiting for two teams, her broom in her hand. "Now, I want a nice, fair game. All of you." Once they were gathered around her, Harry noticed she seemed to be speaking particularly to the Slytherin captain, Marcus Flint, a sixth year. Harry thought Flint looked as if he had some troll blood in him. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the fluttering banner high above, Potter for President, over the crowd. His heart skipped. He felt brave. "Mount your brooms, please." Harry clambered onto his Nimbus 2000. Madame Hooch gave a loud blast on her silver whistle. 15 brooms rose high into the air. They were off, and the quaffle is taken immediately by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor. What an excellent chaser that girl is, and rather attractive too. "Jordan!" "Sorry, Professor." The Weasley twins' friend, Lee Jordan, was doing the commentary for the match, closely watched by Professor McGonagall. "And she's really belting along up there. A neat pass to Alicia Spinnet. A good find for Oliver Woods, last year only reserve. Back to Johnson. And no, the Slytherins have taken the quaffle." Slytherin Captain Marcus Flint gains the quaffle, and off he goes. Flint flying like an eagle up there. They're going to stopped by an excellent move by Gryffindor keeper Wood, and the Gryffindors take the quaffle. That's Chaser Katie Bell of Gryffindor there. Nice dive around Flint. Off up the field, and ouch, they must have hurt. Hit in the back of the head by a bludger. Quaffle taken by the Slytherins. That's Adrian Pusey speeding off toward the goalpost, but he's blocked by a second bludger. Sent his way by Fred or George Weasley, can't tell which. Nice play by the Gryffindor beater. Anyway, and Johnson back in possession of the quaffle. Clear field ahead of her. There she's really flying. Dodges the speeding bludger. The goalposts are ahead. Come on now, Angelina. Keeper Bletchley drives. Misses. Gryffindor score! Gryffindor cheers filled the cold air with howls and moans from the Slytherins. Budge up there. Move along. Hagrid! Ron and Hermione squeezed together to give Hagrid enough space to join them. "Been watching from me hut," said Hagrid, patting a large pair of binoculars around his neck. "But it isn't the same as being in the crowd. No sign of the snitch yet, eh?" "Nope," said Ron. "Harry hasn't had much to do yet." "Kept out of trouble, though. That's something," said Hagrid, raising his binoculars and peering skyward at the speck that was Harry. Way up above them, Harry was gliding over the game, squinting about for some sign of the snitch. This was part of his and Wood's game plan. "Keep out of the way until you catch sight of the snitch," Wood said. "We don't want you attacked before you have to be." When Angelina had scored, Harry had done a couple loops to let off his feelings. Now he was back to staring around for the snitch. Once he caught sight of a flash of gold, but it was just a reflection from one of the Weasleys' wristwatches. And once a bludger decided to come pelting his way, more like a cannonball than anything, but Harry dodged it, and Fred Weasley came chasing after it. "All right there, Harry," he had time to yell, as he beat the bludger furiously toward Marcus Flint. "Slytherin possession," said Lee Jordan was saying. "Chaser Pusey ducks two bludgers, two Weasleys, and Chaser Bell speeds toward the— Wait a moment, was that the snitch?" A murmur ran through the crowd as Adrian Pusey dropped the quaffle, too busy looking over his shoulder at the flash of gold that has passed the left ear. Harry saw it. In a great rush of excitement, he dived downward after the streak of gold. Slytherin seeker Terence Higgs had seen it too. Neck and neck, they hurtled towards the snitch. All the chasers seemed to have forgotten what they were supposed to be doing as they hung in midair to watch. Harry was faster than Higgs. He could see the little round ball wings fluttering, darting up ahead. He put on an extra spurt of speed. Wham! A roar of rage echoed from Gryffindors below. Marcus Flint had blocked Harry on purpose, and Harry's broom spun off, of course, Harry holding on for dear life. "Foul!" screamed the Gryffindors. Madame Hooch spoke angrily to Flint and ordered a free shot at the goalpost for Gryffindor. But in all the confusion, of course, the golden snitch had disappeared from sight again. Down in the stands, Dean Thomas was yelling, "Send him off, ref, red card!" "What are you talking about, Dean?" said Ron. "Red card," said Dean furiously. "In soccer, you get shown the red card and you're out of the game." "This isn't soccer, Dean," Ron reminded him. Hagrid, however, was on Dean's side. "They ought to change the rules. Flint could have knocked Harry out of the air, Lee Jordan was finding it difficult not to take sides. So, after that obvious and disgusting bit of cheating, Jordan, growled Professor McGonagall. I mean, after that open and revolting foul. Jordan, I'm warning you. All right. Flint nearly kills the Gryffindor Seeker, which could happen to anyone, I'm sure. So, penalty to Gryffindor taken by Spinette, who puts it in away. No trouble. Then we continue to play, Gryffindor still in possession. It was Harry dodged another bludger, which went spinning dangerously past his head, that it happened. His broom gave a sudden, frightening lurch. For a split second he was going to fall. He gripped the broom tightly with both hands and knees. He'd never felt anything like that. But it happened again. It was as if the broom was trying to buck him off. But Nimbus 3000s did not suddenly decide to buck their riders off. Harry tried to turn back towards the Gryffindor goalpost. He had half a mind to ask Wood to call time out, and then he realized that his broom was completely out of his control. He couldn't turn it. He couldn't direct it at all. It was zigzagging through the air, and every now and then making violent swishing movements that almost unseated him. Lee was commentating. Slytherin possession. Flint with the quaffle. Passes to Spinette. Passes Bell. Hit hard in the face by a bludger. Hope it broke his nose. Only joking, Professor. Slytherin score. Oh no. The Slytherins were cheering. No one seemed to have noticed that Harry's broom was behaving strangely. It was carrying him slowly higher and higher away from the gate, jerking and twitching as it went. Don't know what Harry thinks he's doing, Hagrid mumbled. He stared through his binoculars. If I didn't know better, I'd say he'd lost control of his broom, but he can't. Suddenly people were pointing up at Harry all over the stands.